Hi everyone, so welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to share with you a comprehensive guide to reading during the winter season. Personally, it's the time when I read the most and a variety of different types of books. So if you're looking for something new to add to your TBR, stay put. Picture this. It's an early winter morning. The snow is slowly falling behind the window, but you're tucked in a warm blanket in the living room. You're sitting in front of a cracking fire, drinking hot chocolate with fluffy marshmallows, and there's only one thing missing: a cozy book to escape into. The first book in the cozy category is gonna be Nettle and Bone by Kingfisher. It's technically a little bit gruesome, a little bit dark, but the vibes are immaculate. It's a very imaginative, very whimsical story that builds upon years of fairy tale conventions. We follow a young woman named Mara, who's the third daughter to the throne of her kingdom and who's been raised in a strict convent far away from her family. Her oldest sister was married off to a prince in exchange for an alliance, and very quickly into the marriage died without leaving any offspring. The second daughter was married off straight away to the same man and struggled with getting pregnant and giving the prince an heir. Her only child, a girl, dies, and the whole family comes to the funeral. During the ceremony, and after a few conversations with her sister, Mara realizes that the marriage is abusive, and her sister also warns her that if she's gonna die, then Mara is gonna be next. Mara is horrified by this knowledge. She wants to break out her sister out of the castle, but she understands that if her sister is going to disappear, it will mean war, that their kingdom is gonna be left without protection. So she goes on a long, dangerous journey to find a great witch that could hopefully help her to achieve what she wants without consequences. There are a bunch of different creatures and challenges that await her in this journey. It is a quest that is set in a very interesting, very fantastical world. The atmosphere of this world is somehow both whimsical and childlike, but also dark and gritty. This was a very interesting combination for me. It was also very interesting to read about an adventure in a fantasy story by a character that is older than a typical heroine of those kinds of tales. It's not an incredibly long story. I highly recommend it, especially as an audiobook. Let's move on to some more typical cozy books. I have a few romances that would be perfect for this season. First, I would like to recommend Romancing the Duke by Tessa, which is one of my favorites by her. You definitely want to be wrapped in a blanket or in your bed, cozy and warm while reading this book, because it's set in a very dreary, cold-sounding castle. The story is about Isolde, who is the daughter of a famous writer of adventure-style novels. She was the protagonist of all of his books, and initially he said that he started writing them because he wanted to read them to her, but then he got famous. What he didn't do for her, though, he has not left her any money and died quite young. So she doesn't have any funds, any property, anything that would help her find a place in the world and be secure, until one of her relatives dies and leaves her a castle. When she arrives to the castle, though, she realizes that she's not the only person there, and that there is someone else named Ransom who also states his claim on the property. Ransom is a scarred duke. He was injured when he was younger, and he is almost blind. He tells Isolde that he's not going to leave this property because it's actually his, and he has no idea how it was sold to someone else in the first place. Because they both need this castle, they are being stubborn, they don't want to leave the property, they get into verbal fights, and neither of them wants to back down. But living together means spending a lot of time together, so they have to get to know each other, and eventually they do fall in love. Now, it's a perfect winter romance because of the forced proximity trope, and because of Isolde's past. Her persona being a part of this lore just adds a cozy, almost fairy tale-ish element to the story. I personally just really love their relationship. I love the conflict in this romance, and I think it's one of Tessa Dare's best. If you are yearning for a classic holiday / Christmas romance, I will highly suggest to pick up Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrun, especially if you have not done this last year when it came out. I read it a week or two prior to the New Year's, and it really got me in the mood for the holidays. This is an FF Kismet romance, and it follows a girl named Ellie who's been dreaming for her whole childhood to become an animation designer, and who finally gets a chance to work on it, but in Portland, and has to move from her friends. She has a terrible relationship with her family. Her mother is a horrible person that constantly squeezes money out of her. So in her first Christmas Eve, in a foreign place, she is alone. And she decides to go to the bookshop to be at least somewhat among humans. And in that bookshop, she meets Jack. They strike up a conversation and obviously have a lot of chemistry, so since they both alone on the Christmas Eve, they decide to spend it together. It's one of those magical one-in-a-lifetime meet-cutes. They spend the whole day together and they really connect, end up sleeping with each other, and Ellie actually hopes for something more. But the next day, they get into a conflict that remains a secret for the majority of the book, and they go their own ways. A year passes, it doesn't look good for Ellie. She lost her job, she's now working as a barista in a coffee shop and hates everything. She doesn't have enough money to keep her mother afloat and herself, and she also is still just as lonely. That is until the coffee shop's landlord offers her a deal. He needs a fiance to get his inheritance. His family is rich, odd, and annoying, so he offers her to accompany him, pretend to be his fiance, and also at the same time he offers her an opportunity to stay somewhere during the holidays. So when she comes to the house, or should I say the manor, she's shocked because she sees Jack for the first time since the day they fought and split up. Jack turns out to be Jacqueline, Andrew's little sister, and she has to spend the holidays pretending to be the fiance of her brother. I have to say that it's one of the best Christmas romances I've ever had. It has all the elements of Christmas romances that I genuinely like. It's not cheesy. It touches upon deeper, meaningful things. The characters are very well fleshed out. It also isn't too Christmassy. It doesn't claim to be a Christmas romance, although the whole thing is happening during the holidays. You can definitely read it before the holidays, after the holidays, during your summer vacation, or truly anytime you like, and it's gonna be a great book. It's not the Christmas romance label that makes it a good romance, and I find that the books that rely too much on being holiday reads are usually not that good. This is genuinely a really good romance, one that I would actually consider rereading. The last but not the least in this category is We Could Be So Good by Sebastian. This is a historical romance set in the 1950s, and it follows two guys that are correspondents for the same paper. One named Nick has been building his career on his own. He comes from a very conservative Italian-American family, and he started by taking very menial, very tedious jobs that no one wants to do. The second guy is slightly younger, and he's the son of the newspaper's owner, so it's expected of him to step into his father's shoes when his father would no longer be able to carry on. On paper, they should hate each other. Their relationship, though, develops regardless of their expectations of it, and eventually they do fall in love and have to figure out if this connection can be. Now, it does sound like Ant's doom and gloom. It does have some angst, but in the most delicious way possible. If you read Cat Sebastian before, you know that her style is always uplifting in some manner, and it is a romance. The conflict of this romance is very obvious and it might not seem particularly hopeful, but Cat Sebastian is good at featuring point of views and characters that you don't expect in this kind of narrative. You would expect a lot of bigotry from the story based in this time period, but there's really not that much of it because of what she chooses to focus on. The first part of the story is just slice of life, and she perfectly showcases why these two characters are perfect for each other. It gets a little bit more complicated, but it is really hard to see them not being together. Once again, Cat Sebastian is the queen of historical romance, and I highly recommend her stuff and this new release as well. If in your heart of hearts you're craving something darker, something a bit more mysterious, I do have these kinds of recommendations also. In this category, I would like to recommend The Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee, which is a dark academia book. It's very chilly, it's quite creepy, and some of the scenes literally gave me the shivers. The story follows Felicity, who lost her girlfriend to an accident. A lot of people believe that she was actually the one that pushed her, and she's the reason why her ex died. She's been in a mental facility for a bit, trying to piece her life back together, and at the start of the story she goes back to Dalloway School. Dalloway School is an elite private school for girls that is now marred with tragedy. She's assigned the same dorm rooms that she lived in a year ago, but now she has to get to know the new bunch of girls, and one of those girls is Ellie. Ellie is a prodigy, she is famous, she's a very well-known author, and she's extremely interested in Felicity's story because Felicity's brush with death. She's eccentric, she's brilliant, and Felicity is quickly caught in her charms. Now the story takes time to build. It's slower, but in that way it reminds me of that frog in the slowly boiling water. When it reaches its peak, all of it is worth it. It's a very interesting mix of an FF dark romance slash thriller dark academia. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of it, and I love the characters. The ending is incredible, it's so good. If you're a fan of corruption arcs, just pick this book up. An oldie but a goodie, one of my favorite books of all time, The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. It's a perfect gothic novel, and it's about a woman named Widow Winter who is a famous author that no one really knows anything about. She's been lying to the press her entire life, making up stories about her childhood and her past, and at the end of her life she decides to hire a professional biographer to actually write down her story. She commissions an unusual person for the job, a young woman named Margaret Lee, who has not written that many biographies but who has a lot in common with Widow, and she promises Margaret that she's going to tell the whole entire truth. This is set in a creepy old mansion. The atmosphere is nerve-wracking. The story itself is so dark and gritty. The secrets of that family are dark as hell, and Widow Winter is an incredibly interesting character to read about. This book is gonna make such a good companion to any fans of the Bly Manor and the House of Usher and the House on the Hills TV shows. If you like spooky shit and uncovering family secrets, this is perfection. The next two books are classical thrillers that take place during winter storms. One is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alison Feeney. The story is about a couple. They've been married for a while and their marriage is pretty rocky. They both decide that they're going to make the last attempt to mend it together by going to a remote guest house in the snowy wilderness. It is implied in both of their point of views that if it's not going to work out, they're going to do something terrible to their spouse. Something terrible really just reads like kill their partner. There's no outside world influence in this guest house. They struggle with connection, and they also get snowed in. The guest house is incredibly creepy. It is a remodel of a church, and they also believe that someone is there with them. It's a very twisted domestic thriller with all these staples, some unreliable narration from both of the characters. It's a fun thriller to read in a day. The other classical thriller that I want to recommend is No Exit by Taylor Adams. I read it during my summer vacation, which is ironic, but it still scared me a lot. The story is about Darby. She's in college and she was not planning to get back to Utah, to her hometown, ever again, until she gets a call from her sister that says that their mother is terminally ill and she's in the hospital and Darby needs to come to say goodbye to her. Darby gets into her car and drives to Utah, but in the middle of her journey, the roads are struck with a snowstorm and she has to swerve to the rest stop to wait it out. During an attempt to connect to the fire department so they could be dug out of the snow and taken somewhere else, she sees a movement in one of the tracks and notices a cage. In that cage, she finds a child that was obviously kidnapped by one of the people at the rest stop. She obviously wants to break her out and make sure that she's safe, but she doesn't know who to trust at the rest stop. Who's gonna be her ally and who out of these people had stolen the girl in the first place. It's one of those thrillers that don't give you an opportunity to breathe. Every few pages something happens. There are so many plot twists in this book. I guessed some of them, but I completely skipped over others and were genuinely surprised a lot. It helps that Darby, the protagonist of the story, is a genuinely very capable person. She's capable of making quick and effective decisions. It genuinely makes you root for her, because oftentimes in these kinds of survival thrillers you don't root for the protagonist because they're usually too dumb or too sugary sweet and perfect. Darby is not a perfect person. She's very flawed and it makes her a richer character. Long snow weekends are often the only time when you can indulge your inner homebody without feeling any guilt. In those quiet, serene moments, engrossing and vast series work a real charm. What if you're not into cozy books and you're not keen on creepy thrillers either? I personally think that winter is perfect for a longer fantasy series. If that sounds like a good option, I have a few suggestions for you. One of the series is one of my all-time favorites. It's the other series by Anne Bishop. I know that I do recommend it a lot on my channel, but I also know that you have not read it yet. Yes, you. So the other series is a paranormal/urban fantasy with a very interesting world building. In this world, paranormal creatures do not live among humans. It's the humans that live among paranormal creatures. The world belongs to them, not to us. The story follows a young girl named Meg. She's a blood prophet. It's a very rare type of creature, and she's been held in a compound and used for the entertainment of the influential men. They bled her so she would be able to tell them their future. She escapes the compound and stumbles upon Lakeside Courtyard, which is a piece of land that is fully controlled by the others, the supernatural creatures. One of the prominent members of this society, a shapeshifter named Simon, allows her to stay as a human liaison in the district because he feels that something is off with her. She doesn't smell like prey, like a human, and with this starts a journey of Meg adapting into this society. There are dangers, there are adventures, there are secrets that are not quite yet revealed to humans about the others. It's a very fun time. The characters are so lovable. It's about found family, obviously, because Meg doesn't technically has one. She doesn't really know kindness at the start of the story because she was abused. But these creatures accept her into their community and they genuinely like her. It's such a wonderful series. It gifted me with so many hours of pure pleasure and happiness. I love it. I still really love it. A series that I read recently and that I even made an in-depth video on, the Green Creek series by Klune, is also perfect for those long winter months. The Green Creek series is werewolf romance series with quite a bit of fantasy thrown in. The romance and paranormal / fantasy elements are very well blended. It's a really good combo of these two things. The first book, Wolfsong, follows a boy named Ox, whose father left abruptly and who's been trying to figure out what's wrong with him and why his father would leave him for the majority of his childhood and teenagehood. He is brought up by his mother and the man from the local body shop. This body shop is where he finds community and where he starts working from a very early age. One day when he's a little bit older, he meets a boy he's never seen before in this area, and it turns out that this boy's family just moved in the empty house down the road, and they're gonna be neighbors. The boy immediately is attached to him like a little cute leech, and they become friends. Later in the story, it is finally revealed to Ox that this family is a pack of werewolves, and the boy that became his best friend is also one that more so is supposed to become an alpha, and Ox is most definitely his soulmate. It is an incredible series. It draws you in pretty quickly. It has all the good tropes, the found family trope, and I think stylistically also Klune has done a very good job here. It does feel like a continuous story. The series itself has some books that I love more and some books that I love less, but overall it was a very fun experience reading it. I highly recommend it once again if you're looking for a longer series that you can quickly get invested, because it's definitely one of those. It sure will take a lot of time for you to read all of these, so I will finish here. If you have any recommendations for me, leave them in the comments down below. If you watch my channel, you know what I like. If you want to share what you're reading at the moment or what you plan to read this winter, tell us in the comments as well. On this note, if you reached this part of the video, leave an emoji of a snowflake in the comments to tell me that you like the video, and I will see you soon with another one, but until then, bye.